So first off, welcome Senator Gustafson to the call. First and foremost, you heard me introduce this. We want to give you all the credit. How'd you come up with this idea of the Office of Inspector General, and where does that bill stand now?
So as a first-term senator, I knew that this was something that we wanted to tackle. I represent a very purple district. So, pretty early on, I asked, what are we doing? What are we working on? Where are the gaps? After looking at everything that we had in place, the work that the DFL already had been doing, we still identified that there were some things that we could be doing better, especially on the front end to be more proactive. And so I worked early on with Senator Carrie Dietzick to come up with this OIG bill. She recommended that I look into it, so I did, and that's where it started. But we brought in bipartisan voices right off the bat, especially when we knew that the House was going to be tied. We really wanted to make sure that everybody had a seat at the table, met with all sorts of stakeholders, from law enforcement to agencies to the OLA to just anybody who might have some input on this to make sure that the bill was strong, and we got going right away.
That's fantastic. You've emphasized that the debate isn't about whether Minnesota needs stronger oversight, but how to structure it. From your view as the bill's author, what are the non-negotiable elements an OIG needs in order to effectively stop fraud and protect taxpayer dollars?
I think independence, jurisdiction across agencies, professional investigative authority, and transparency and public reporting. We really want to make sure that this is as independent as possible, because it doesn't matter that there's no political angle to it. Politics does not become an influencing factor. It is truly an independent agency that works for people, for taxpayers, for Minnesotans, people first.
Absolutely. The Senate passed Senate File 856 after months of hard work and input from members across the chamber. What did that process look like, and how did you and other DFLers help move the bill to a place where it could pass with such broad support?
Yeah, so the Senate, I mean, we were deliberate and inclusive from the start. Instead of after being here for 3.5 years, it does make a bill move much quicker and is a lot more of a thoughtful and respectful process if you bring in people early on, especially people who might have reservations about it. So again, looking at a tied House, we brought in Republicans pretty early on. I've got 2 Republican co-authors, and then I chose to present with a Republican co-author as a way to show that bipartisanship can work on issues that are big and broad like this one. And then also as maybe a model to the House about what bipartisanship can look like early on. And so we did that. We began working with everybody. And we did something called a bicameral bipartisan weekly meeting on Tuesday nights. We invited nonpartisan in. Staff was also there. It was a pretty large group. And we would just work shoulder to shoulder on the language. Now, I'm the chief author, and so ultimately the decision was mine. And I had the final say on language. But to have everybody in the room to sort of do those debates early on really proved to be useful. And especially over in the House, they got to see how we're going to craft it in the Senate. They were able to have a voice in that saying as well, which is why I think it in the end got so much broad support, because people felt invested in it pretty early on.
Got it. All right. Finally, last question. This bill is about trust that public dollars are being spent responsibly and that problems will be caught when they arise early. As a DFL senator leading this effort, what would passing a strong Office of Inspector General mean to you? And what message would it send to Minnesotans who expect their government to work for them?
Yeah, we want an independent oversight authority to manage and keep track of fraud and misuse of tax dollars in our state. It's as simple as that. This is something that would work with existing programs, but in a way that we haven't seen before. Be able to recognize patterns early on, be able to they have subpoena power, they can recommend legislation, and we're not waiting for a report to come out after the fact in order to act. This is something that is very proactive and investigative, which I think is just the gap that needs to be addressed as we're looking at fraud preventions going forward. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing that is clear, and I feel like everyone needs to know, the DFL is serious about fraud prevention. And all of the things that maybe you see the headlines in the news are really about some stuff that's pretty inside baseball. Everybody wants oversight. Everybody wants a fair and independent process. It's just legislation is oftentimes messy and goes through a lot of different hiccups before we get it across the finish line. But the DFL has addressed fraud and fraud prevention. They're going to continue to do that. We just need to make sure that we're putting the right amount of pressure on the people that maybe still have a few more questions about it. But in the end, I think both Democrats and Republicans will find a solution that will get passed.
Well said. Well, Senator, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your leadership on this really important piece of legislation. We always have a call to action. Is there any call to action you want to offer folks on this call? We have 127 people ready to jump into action.
Yeah, I would recommend calling members of the House and just telling them how important it is to have that independent oversight. And I think just to let them know that you support them and you support this bill and what it can do for Minnesotans, I think that would be helpful.
Awesome. You heard it there. So our call to action, what Senator Gustafson just shared, is really important. Real accountability doesn't just happen by accident. It happens because leaders like you are willing to really roll up your sleeves and do the work. So please call your state House member and let them know that we need to pass this Office of Inspector General bill that the DFL is championing along the way.